Hello, this is Craig Mertens, Director of Product Education for Printavo, the parent company of Printavo, InkSoft Graphics Flow, and SignTracker. Welcome to our webinar today. Today we're going to talk about, in my opinion, a really exciting topic, and that is integration between InkSoft and Printavo. What you're going to be seeing here today is the first phase of the first phase, I like to call it. So this is the first time that Printavo and InkSoft have truly been integrated. So what that means is any order that you create in your InkSoft platform will now seamlessly flow into Printavo, so you can run it through Printavo's production tools. And what I've done here today, we put together a quick little kind of a PowerPoint to show you the high level of what we're doing. It truly is phase one of phase one. This is the first part of our integration with these two features, but there's going to be more to come as we continue to integrate the programs. One of the questions that people keep asking me is, are they going to be combined into one software? And that's currently not part of our roadmap. Our roadmap is really to intertwine them so they work very productively together as part of a technology suite. And I like to call it an ecosystem. So the ecosystem is Graphics Flow on the graphics management side, Printavo on shop management and scheduling, and then InkSoft on the e-commerce side. And then we also have SignTracker now, which is our side shop management solution. So let me run through this little deck and I'll show you guys the kind of the high level. So by bringing InkSoft powered stores into Printavo for production, you no longer have to prioritize your sales engine over your production capabilities and vice versa. When we got together as a single unified company under the Printavo parent company, we had many, many clients that were using both platforms. So hundreds that were using both InkSoft and Printavo. So what do you think was the question that we got asked for 2 years? The question we got asked for 2 years is, when are these two programs going to work together? When are they going to be integrated? But it's a pretty big project. It's a pretty big lift. And from the point of view of two, independent code bases that never talked to each other before, we had to kind of unify the code bases so that they could connect. It was a pretty big project. And so what you're going to see today is kind of the fruition of all that work. And yes, it's been a long time coming, but I think the payoff is quite well worth it. If you're an InkSoft user and you just love using InkSoft for the store platform, and you're a Printavo user and you love Printavo for production and workflow, now they work together. And so you don't have to prioritize one or the other. So you get to benefit from the powerful combination of InkSoft's online store creation and Printavo's shop management in a streamlined setup. And of course, you're enhancing your sales and production efficiency. So you're working at maximum efficiency by leveraging the tool set of both these very robust platforms. The way you're going to be doing that is by connecting your Printavo account with your InkSoft account. So what you see here is a screen that's in InkSoft, where basically you're just logging into Printavo through InkSoft, and that's connecting the account. And once those accounts are connected, we have the ability to share stores. And we can do that on a store level, or we can do that globally. So if you just have a small little pop-up store that you don't need to share with Printavo because you're just going to fulfill orders as they come in, you can disconnect the stores. You don't have to connect them. But what we're seeing, and now that we've got hundreds of users out there using this integration, people are just pretty much connecting their stores as a standard practice because they see the benefits of how convenient it is to have both platforms working really well together. So the power and convenience of InkSoft stores matched with the automation and efficiency of Printavo. And one of the things that I want to do today in the class is there's a lot of InkSoft users here that may not be familiar with Printavo. And a common question I get is, isn't Printavo and InkSoft really similar? There are some feature overlaps, but they're really quite different in terms of capabilities. So today I'm going to provide kind of the high-level overview of Printavo. And then what we'll do is we'll create some orders in InkSoft and then funnel them through production in Printavo so you can kind of see the lay of the land and how well it works together. So ultimately what we're trying to do is provide a scalable solution that can handle your increasing order volume. So as your business is growing and it's building, you can leverage technology to scale without having to really throw more employees at it. Yeah, I think one of the things that I always recommend is, leveraging technology almost like an employee so that you can grow and expand without having to necessarily invest in more employees, but more importantly, maybe regain some of that life balance. Because I think oftentimes what happens in a small business is you grow and you just get more work. Nobody can do it as well as you can do it, right? So you just take on more and more and more, and you're growing, but you're just putting in more hours and you're doing more work. And as a result of that, a lot of times your life balance gets a little out of whack. So I think that's always a secondary benefit that I like to call out when we're talking about adopting technology. So let's kind of get into Printavo, and I'll give you guys the high level tour of Printavo and what it's really all about. And I'll try to point out some of the key differences in Printavo versus InkSoft as we go through this, and kind of where everything fits in the ecosystem. Think of Printavo as your production scheduling system. This is where you're going to run your daily business. This is where you're going to invoice. This is where you're going to do quotes. This is where you're going to schedule jobs for production. This is where really you're going to run the shop side of your business. So think of InkSoft as your sales engine, and think of Printavo as your production engine. And when you first log into the app, the first thing you're going to see is the calendar. And I'm going to come back to the calendar a little bit, but this is a high-level view of what's going on in the shops. And every single little rectangle in here indicates a job. That job is on a production date. That production date might be different than the due date for the customer. So we're trying to get ahead of these jobs. And every color code that you're seeing here is indicating the status that job is at. And I can go in and click into a job and see what's, specifics about that particular job. I can actually click over to the corresponding invoice. I can move jobs around. But at a glance, I can just see what's going on for that particular job. And we're going to come back to the calendar in a little bit. So the way it starts in terms of Printavo, it really starts with a quote. And the way you would typically initiate the quote is you have a customer and you want to create a quote for that customer. So Printavo has a built-in CRM, just like InkSoft has a built-in CRM. They're a little bit different. When we go to customers in Printavo, and we'll just search and look for a customer real quick, and we'll select Adam here. We have Adam's account here. We have all the billing information, any kind of special information, ACH only. So that's telling me that Adam prefers not to pay by credit card, that he prefers to pay by electronic funds transfers. Adam's getting a 10% discount on all his orders because Adam's my brother-in-law, maybe. There's the high-level information. We have additional contacts here. So we've added Sassy here as an additional contact on the order. And then here's the history of Adam's spending with me. And I can see that Adam's got quite a bit of outstanding balances here because Adam's chosen quite frequently in our demo account as a customer. And you can see all the statuses of Adam's orders, and you can see the one that are completed and the one that are in production and in different stages. So you have at a glance just the ability to see what's going on. And we also know Adam's tax rate, and then we're not giving him turns. He's got to pay for everything up front. This is also where I'd record a payment if I was taking a manual payment. So we're going to create a new quote. We're actually going to do a landscaping design, and I'll show you how I created the artwork in a bit. And when I'm creating that quote, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put a nickname in here for this particular job, and I'm going to call this landscape right here. And then what I'm going to do, put in some notes for Adam, and these are going to be customer-facing notes. So if there's any particular information that you want to relay to the customer that's maybe specific to this job, like we will need the art by 4:10 in order to meet your deadline. And then here's some production notes. So if I have specific things for maybe the art department or the production department, like for instance, hey, this is a custom-made color. Make sure we've got ink mixed because that's going to hold you guys up. Or possibly information like this client is slow pay, must be paid in advance. Customers are not going to see this. Now, the other thing that we can do here is we can add the production files. This is a big deal. And the production files is a feature of the Printavo Premium plan. And that enables the file that is actually going to be utilized by your art and production team to travel with the order. So think of this as kind of like a built-in Google Drive, but the artwork is traveling with the order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a production file here. This is a file that I created in our graphics flow platform for a demo that I did right before the class where I was working with the client. They do a lot of landscaping work. And so we created this file in our graphics flow platform, and I saved it as a production-ready PDF file, all color separated. And I'm going to upload that. So that's going to be traveling with us as the job goes through. But at some point, we might hand this off to the art department, and maybe they're going to go in and make some changes to the design for the final production, maybe put a white underbase under it. They can also attach the file in the production version. So maybe they call it Four Seasons 01 Production. So they know that that's the file that they're going to be utilizing to print the film. So that's avoiding a lot of that miscommunication that might have happened between departments. Because from my experience, being involved in a rather large collegiate sportswear business as our family business, there's always a kind of a communication breakdown between customer service accounting, sales department, production department, and the art department. There's a lot of moving parts there. So kind of getting all that artwork into one centralized area helps kind of eliminate that. And we also know that the right artwork is pulled for the job, which is critically important. Now, this particular job is going to be a screen printing job. And I'm going to go to my description here, and I happen to know some of the part numbers. I could just type in SNS, or I could type in Gildan, but I use Gildan 2000 shirt all the time. And for this particular client, they wanted black shirts, and I'm going to put in my quantities here. And I'm not going to generate pricing yet because I'm going to let the software generate pricing for me. And I could drop in 2X. I have a little drop down button here. If we're going to do 4X, 5X, I can add that to the column if I choose to. And then at this point, I'm going to connect the imprint, and I'm going to create a little mock-up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to imprint, and I've set up pricing matrices for all the different types of print work that I do. So maybe I have print work that is associated with direct-to-film transfers. Maybe I'm ordering transfers from the outside. So maybe I print them internally, but I also order transfers. So I could designate that. Maybe I have a DTG printer, sublimation, screen printing. And so I'm going to just check screen printing here, but I'm going to choose a pricing matrix in there. And so I'm going to select a matrix because this is what we're going to use to actually generate the pricing. And one of the things that's really nice about Printavo is the matrix is pretty simple. We can download a spreadsheet template. So if it's easier to work offline, and just put in your pricing into a spreadsheet. So for instance, price breaks 1 to 23, 24 to 48. Maybe you have different imprint charges for the smaller orders versus the larger orders. And maybe you have a markup percentage that de-escalates on the larger orders. So it goes from, you start off with a 60% markup, and then the bigger orders, you go to 55, go to 50. So we can input that in an unlimited number of pricing matrices, and we can input that into the system because we're going to use that to quote the job. And because this job is currently a 2-color job, actually it's 3-color, I'm actually going to price it once I select screen printing. I'm going to use my general screen printing price list. I'm not going to use the contractor price list, or maybe I have a specific client. Maybe it's the brother-in-law pricing. But I am going to designate this as a 4-color because I want to accommodate for the white ink and the underlay. And so I'm going to click on done. And then at this point, I'm just going to hit refresh so we can get the pricing. And I notice it's $848. So I'm going to carve out a little more margin in here, and I'm just going to round this up to $875 because I can override that pricing. It's taxable. So we'll leave that as a taxable product. And then what I'm going to do is just hit the mockup creator to create the mockup. So another point, we're going to alleviate some of that extra work. So we don't have to go to the art department to have them do a mockup. We're going to create the art proof. We're going to be able to create an effective visual representation of the product without any really external steps. And so what I'm going to do is add the design in here. And here's the design. I'm going to make sure that it's placed properly on the shirt. And I'm going to, if this was a pocket, obviously we're going to put it over your pocket. This one's going to be a full chest. We've got our nice little design here. I like on these center front patch designs a little bit smaller and a little bit lower. I'm going to save the mockup. I have a back view because we're pulling all this data from SNS. So we're linked to a product feed, and that product feed is live. So we're getting the new colors as they're added. We're getting new photography as it's added. We're being given the sizes that are available. So all the important things that you need in order to build your quote are being fed in from SNS, Alpha Broder, as well as from Sanmar. And so I'm going to go ahead and save this mockup. So the mockup saved. I'm just going to click on this little link to go back to the quote. And then I have a little bit more work to do up here for my invoice. This is who I'm going to assign it to. So because I'm assigned to this, I'm going to get all the emails that are connected with this. Delivery method, in this case, it's going to be a pickup, but we're coordinated with Easy Post, so we can automatically generate shipping quotes and create tracking. If there is a PO number in here, I'm going to put that in there. Here's the date that's created. Production due date, we can pick another date. So this is going to be due on the 10th, and the customer due date is on the 12th. So we gave ourselves a 2-day buffer, and I'm actually going to invoice this on the 11th. And then because it's going to be due on receipt, that's notified. But let's say it was net 30. We're gonna give Adam another shot at net 30. You notice it automatically generated the 30 days out payment due date, and it's keeping track of all that. The other thing we're doing is we have what's called a profile, And this is used for companies that have multiple locations. So maybe you bought another company and it's got a slightly different name and you want the invoice to come from your other company. So you can share a Printavo account, but have the invoicing come from two different people. Your books are all going to be the same, but the packing slip and all the shipping details are going to be different. Or you're contract printing for somebody. And so maybe you're contract printing for Sound and Fury and you want the invoice to come from Sound and Fury with their logo, with their colors. You can set up what's called a contractor profile, and the packing slip is going to look like it's coming from them. So it's a really great way if you're doing contract printing to track all that. Looks like we've got everything we need for the order. So I'm going to click on Save and Finish. And two ways of scheduling this. So we can schedule this for production using the calendar. It's kind of a simple, easy, visual way to do it. So we're going to scoot back to the calendar here. And we're going to go zip over to the 10th. So there's the job right there. I noticed that the status it's currently in is, it's quote, we haven't gotten it moving yet. And the way we're going to get this order moving is by virtue of using statuses within Printavo. And those are customized based on how you do things. Now, maybe we wanted to move the date around a little bit, and maybe we had to push it over here to the 11th. So I'm just going to drag it into the 11th. And then now in the actual invoice, it's going to be changing there as well. So it's really super easy to move things around. And let's go back to that invoice. And we're back to that invoice. And you can see the production due date changed over here. And here's where I'm going to track all the payments. Here's where we're going to track any kind of tasks that are created. And we don't have any tasks that are created because we haven't done anything yet. So we are just letting this right now just sit here as a quote. But what we're going to do is we're going to put it into action. And so these statuses right here are the journey of an order through our system. And these are the general statuses for all orders, how they travel through our system. And you notice they're color-coded. So everything that is connected to the art department's in orange. We've got a little bit of a color palette indicating this is an art department related thing. We have a little rocket ship here that's indicating that there's an automation that's set up for that particular status. So the first automation that we set up here is send quote for approval. And so I'm going to send that quote for approval. And an email just went out, and I tailored that email on my messaging. You can set up a text message as well. And this is your first automation. And when this comes back and the customer clicks on it and pays, as we set this up as ACH and we have integrated payments that are built into Printavo, just like InkSoft, it's going to go and automatically move that over to the status, which is term customer paid. And then what I can do is I can see the log of activities that are going on. Here's the message for the quote. It's automatically populating Adam's information in here, prompting him to hit, second reminder. And then this is thanking him for paying us. So we're automating all of that. Any tasks that are automated that are required for the process of getting this through production are going to be right here. So I can assign a specific task. We'll assign it to Ellie. So I can create a task over here for Ellie. But there's another way of kind of managing that and managing your tasks. We'll talk about that in a second. But one of the things that's really nice about statuses is that if I'm in the art department, I don't care about all this other stuff that's going on. I only care about my stuff. So I can go over here and I can customize statuses based on the way my workflow is, but I can also change the views. So I'm not having to look at all the other stuff that's going on for all the other departments. If I only want to look at, the art department views, I can do that. Customize statuses. This is set up the way you work. So we give you some basic statuses. You can add them, delete them, move them around. But this is your workflow. So Printavo is not forcing you to go in and conform to the software's workflow. You're setting up your workflow. And especially when I'm talking to people that do whiteboarding, let's go back to the calendar. We can go over here and start filtering by statuses. So I could turn everything off. And then maybe I only want to see art department related things. Here's all the activities for following week. And then we have daily views as well as monthly views. Everything's drag and drop. So this is how generally the workflow is working within Printavo, is we are invoicing, we're sending out the confirmations to the customer, we're collecting payment, it's scheduling everything into a production schedule on the calendar. And so how is the order from InkSoft getting over here? So let's show you how it integrates. I'm going to go into my InkSoft account. Is instead of starting a new store all the time, the easiest way to start a store is actually by utilizing the cloning function. So what I've done is I've created some stores that are kind of my model template stores. So I created a store that is a model store for schools. I created a store that's a model store for signage. I created a model store for corporate, a couple of those actually, a team store. And so the way I would create a store is I would go into my quick stores template here. I would click on clone. All of the settings for that store are going to come over. I can name the store. Obviously, I can give it a URL, or if I'm using domain forwarding, I can put the domain that it's going to. Over here, huge advantage, included products and store art. If you're not using that feature, it's one of the more useful and meaningful features that have been added to InkSoft in the last year. It's just a great feature because you can curate your product catalog for that store. You can assign products to that store, and the new store will have those same products. They don't have to be populated visibly in the web page, but they're in your catalog for that store, and we can globally swap out the art from all of the other art on a group of products. Like all the polo shirts have this left chest embroidery, and now we went in and swapped out all the polo shirts with the new left chest embroidery for the new store. So let me show you kind of what the original store looked like, and then we'll show you what the clone store looked like. So the original store for the template started out looking like this. So it had the Eagles logo in here and had my 6 most common products. And then what I've done is I've cloned that store and I created my own little personal store, and I really tweaked it out. So I went in here, added some new products using the Rapid Product Creator, but I had the shell template, so I didn't really have to do anything. The only thing I really had to do is come in here and go to settings and change the logo and the store branding. And then if I had a separate new contact person, put that person in. It's just a really super quick way to deploy a store. And one of the other things that I always like to show is, while we're in here, on another store that I cloned is East Eagles Booster right here. I actually integrated a design where I can directly edit on this design. I created this design in the designer. This was a piece of artwork from Graphics Flow. I saved it from Graphics Flow as a PDF. I imported it in the designer. I typed in this line of text in the same font because the fonts in Graphics Flow line up with the InkSoft fonts. I saved it. I added it to a category. And so now I'm direct linking to this. So if the customer wants to come in here and put their sport in there, they can do that. In this particular store, I limited the color palette. I created a color palette that's just basically 5 colors. It's the blue, it's the gold, it's the white, and I added black and gray, I think. And so they can't really go outside the norms of those colors. But let's say the customer's in here, and the customer wants to transact and create an order. If I go over here, I'll just go to Add Art and click on Browse Design Ideas. And these are just some more templates from Graphics Flow I created. But if I had this store linked up with Printavo, this order is automatically going to flow into Printavo. What we'll do is I'll show you how to link a store. The way you would do that, which is pretty straightforward, if I want to get to the point where I want to connect my account, the way we're going to do that is over here in the right corner. You see where it says Printavo accounts? This is where I'm connecting or disconnecting my account. So I've already connected my account. So it says it's connected. Because it's connected, if I go over here to stores and start scrolling down, I can see all the stores that are currently connected. If I want to individually start selecting stores and connecting them, I can do that. There's a little toggle where you can connect all your stores if you want to. I don't really recommend doing that because I think it's a better practice to just kind of selectively pick what stores you're going to do. But you have a toggle if you want to turn them on for all stores. It's very clever. If you disconnect your stores, it goes through a routine where it makes sure things don't get lost in the shuffle. And you kind of get to choose what happens. You know, if you want to finish the production in Printavo, or if you just want to start it over from scratch in InkSoft, you can do that. But in this case, I have this particular store. So it's a store right here. So let's create an order. So I'm going to go into the store and I'm just going to create an order from a pre-printed product. So we'll go over here and click on that, and navy looks good. And I'm going to do, let's say 6 mediums in here, or 5 mediums, because everybody in my family is the same size. We'll click on add, and I'll go to my cart and go to checkout, pick my address or key in the address. Now here's an important thing. We added a new function to InkSoft. So if the customer is going through their cart or they've saved artwork, so if they've saved artwork and they're logged into their account, you're going to get a notification. You can turn on notifications. You're going to get notified, hey, this customer saved art. That gives you the ability to follow up. But if they go in, if we've captured their email because they've gone through the initial part and they kind of decide at the end that they don't want to transact. The way it works now is that you have an abandoned cart email sequence. You can enable that, and you can send up to 3 emails that will have a link to the cart saying, hey, you notice you didn't check out. Maybe you want to pay. Click on the pay button. You can put a promo code in there for maybe a nudge them with a little extra discount. You can do that. But we'll go ahead and just take this order and we'll say arrange payment later. Click continue. Click place order. That order is going to go into my order manager. And there's my order right here. Maybe it was through the designer, and I have a rule set up for that particular store to automatically go into pending approval, and I need to approve that order. I can do that. Maybe I want to log a manual payment because this isn't paid, so I just call up my client and say, hey, I noticed you haven't paid yet. Let's go in here and get you all paid up. So I'll just manually log payment, and client came by, had cash, and then we're going to pay that up. And here's my order. So you will notice a couple things. In this order, you're going to see a P, which is indicating that the store is linked. You are going to see in Printavo, it means the order has been transferred to Printavo. It's sitting in my storefronts area, and it's waiting to be converted into an invoice, or you could also call it a job. I think those two terms are pretty interchangeable. So you'll also notice that some of these orders say in Printavo in production. What that is telling me is that I've already converted it to an invoice/job, and it's walking through in Printavo's production cycle. And if I want to take a peek at that, if I click on the little link here to the invoice in InkSoft, it says, hey, this has been compiled in InkSoft. It's an InkSoft order. It's been converted to a job in Printavo, and it needs purchasing. So we have instant visibility on that. And incidentally, if you want to link over to this order in Printavo, all you got to do is click on that little link right there. And guess what? We're back in Printavo. And there's the invoice that's actually related to that particular InkSoft order. And orders come from InkSoft in 3 different fashions. They come from InkSoft in the context of somebody just going on a web store, placing an order. They also come in from anything that was ordered through the designer, and they also come in through anything that was run through proposals, which in InkSoft is the InkSoft invoicing and quotation tool. So any order that's created in InkSoft, the payments being processed in InkSoft, is going to get handed off to Printavo for production. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to storefronts, and let's kind of avoid a common mistake people make, which is they come into the new storefronts area and they're like, hey, where's my InkSoft order? Right here, it says Printavo merch. These are all the orders that you might be running through Printavo's e-commerce capability. And think of Printavo's e-commerce capability as an online order form. It's a very simplistic order form. Using it for collecting payment, you can take an invoice and convert it over to just an order form rather quickly. And it's actually a really complementary feature to InkSoft, because sometimes you just want to create a quick little order form to have customers pay, and you can just do that in Printavo. But you get the best of both worlds, because over here, if you slide over to InkSoft stores, and the mistake people make is they're looking for their InkSoft order over here, just go to InkSoft stores and you can see all the stores that are connected and any new orders. So collating orders. Talked to a client yesterday, and the client's commentary was this. He says, we do a lot of heat transfers, and in the current e-commerce solution I have to go and tally all the transfers for each design. And if it's youth or adult, I have to do a separate tally. And he says, I'm digging through hundreds of orders to get those tallies. Well, one thing you could do in InkSoft, you could run a report to get that data. But another thing you could do with integration is let's let the software collate this. So if you would put a separate graphic on the design in InkSoft in your store and call that graphic youth, and then call the adult graphic adult, then you can keep track of those independently. And those will be independently tracked when you convert this to an invoice or a job in Printavo. So if I go into my store, I notice I've got 2 orders in here. And one of the questions that customers will ask is, hey, do I have to separate these out into separate orders by graphic? No, you don't have to do that at all, because if I click on this, and this one happens to have the same graphic, it's going to compile everything. I maybe have 100 orders that trickled in here over a month. It's going to compile everything. It's going to split out every single unique product out of its own line. And it's going to look at the shirt color. It's going to look at the style. It's going to look at the imprint. It's going to look at the imprint location. and it's going to split that into a separate line in the invoice. And then I'll show you a really clever way of scheduling this in a second. Let's convert this over to an invoice. So I'm going to click on Add to Invoice. We're going to pick out a customer here. So we'll go and grab Adam. Again, Adam gets a lot of activity. Now let's switch it up. Let's do Sally Sasquatch here. So we'll go ahead and create that as an invoice. So what happened with this? So it's just an invoice now. We don't need any payment information. We can see that, the order's been paid, but we don't really need to track any of the financial stuff over here because we're going to do we've already collected the payment over in InkSoft, but you've got a little bit more visibility. You notice the default status is compiled InkSoft order. So it's just throwing that into a default status. And I'm going to go ahead and click on this order right here. And what you're going to see is one line item because it collated those two orders for the same graphic and same style into a single line item. And it'll do that for every imprint location, and style on the order. So you can just put them on a single invoice. And we're going to talk about the Power Scheduler here in a minute, and then it'll start to click for you guys why Power Scheduler is such a big deal. Because if we just schedule this on the calendar, we can't segregate all the different moving parts of graphics and styles and all of those kind of things into, it's just one job on the calendar. But if we use Power Scheduler, we can schedule all of these independently. So the first thing I really want to do here is take a look at it. 7 total units here. That's nice. If I was ordering transfers, that's how many transfers I need to order. Next thing I want to do is I want to connect the imprint. And so a question that we get all the time, and I think it's a great question, is like, hey, why do I have to tell it how I'm printing this? Here's why. Over in InkSoft, we can set up rules for a store. We can say, if you're going to do a single unit, I'm going to charge you $25 for that t-shirt. And I know that I'm going to probably print that on my DTG printer, or maybe I have a stack of transfers waiting there. But if you order 48, I know I'm going to screen print it. I want to have the latitude of making that call. And so because this is a 7-piece order, I'm probably going to do this with the DTF transfer. But in this case, I'm just going to set it up for screen printing just so I can kind of show you a little bit of detail. So we can make that call over in Printavo. So I'm going to go over and add an imprint. I'm going to choose as my type of work. I'm going to choose screen printing. I don't need to really connect it to a matrix or number of inks or anything like that, because guess what? I already know that this is priced and charged over in InkSoft. So I don't need this data to generate a pricing quote, because if you're doing a quote or invoice in Printavo, you would absolutely positively need this to do your pricing quote. So I don't really have to fill that out, but I got to fill this out because we got to know what type of imprint it is. So I'm just going to hit done over here, and I'm going to hit save and finish. And at this point, we're ready to schedule for production. This is why Power Scheduler is a big deal. There's 2 ways to get this job onto production. Now it's on the calendar now. So this job's on the calendar now, but there's 2 ways to get it into production on the Power Scheduler. Way number 1, I could just go over here and go to schedule and just add it if I chose to. I could go over here to in production, and I have an automation set up. So as soon as I get all this stuff done, when I click on in production, I set up an automation to automatically put it on the Power Scheduler. I don't have it add the date, and this is a great best practice if you're a Printavo user or you're considering Printavo. Don't put it on a piece of equipment. Don't put it on a date when you schedule it. Just throw it into unassigned, because then you can look at everything in unassigned and prioritize equipment and prioritize due dates. If you put it on a date, it's automatically going to go into that date. And if you put it on a piece of equipment, it's automatically going to that piece of equipment. You don't really see the big picture. And so what I always recommend doing is just adding it to the Power Scheduler and coming over here, and I'm going to put the minutes on it. So we're just going to put the minutes on this job right here. And it's, 7 units? Boy, I don't really want to set that up, but we'll set it up. We're going to have to put a half an hour on that. And now maybe I do know that I'm going to put it on manual 1, because at this point, I'm definitely putting it on manual 1. The idea here is that now I have the latitude of what date I want to throw it onto. I'm just going to go into my Power Scheduler, and I'm going to look at all of my unassigned jobs. We are going to go ahead and get this assigned out to a particular piece of equipment. And so auto 1, manual 1. Here's our manual 1. So here's our job. Got 30 minutes on it. Oh, I'm going to change my mind and put 40 minutes on it. We can do that. But you know what? I got some capacity on Sunday. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this job, and I can either put the data in here, but probably easier just to drag and drop her in there. And now I can see exactly what my capacity level is. And so I've only used up really 30 minutes of my 1,260 minutes on my manual right now. So I can see it kind of at a glance of what's going on here. Or did I throw that on auto too? We don't want to put that on auto too. So let's move that back onto manual 1. So there we go. So, I've got just barely touched capacity. And you know what? I'm just going to come in on Sunday and bang that out in the morning, and I've got some other office work I'm going to do because it's kind of a small order and I don't really want to have to deal with it midweek. But because you're seeing all of your unassigned jobs, it's just really easy to kind of look at them and say, okay, I'm going to put these 2 into Sunday. I'm going to put these 4 into Monday. Maybe I want to move it. And I said, I just didn't really want to come in on Sunday. I'm just going to push it into Monday. So super easy to do it. And then the other part that's just so awesome is if you have rush orders, and I remember when we had our printing business, my dad was of the philosophy that anytime you got a rush order, take it. And the reason he would take rush orders is A, keep the customer happy. That's great. B, we charge a rush fee, so we make a little bit more money on it. And he always thought of it, C, as found money. It's just like money that came in out of nowhere, might as well capitalize on it. That was his philosophy. Our production manager, that made him crazy because it would just wreck the entire production schedule. And we worked off a job envelope and whiteboarding system. So there was a lot of scribbling and erasing going on. It was not a pleasant situation. There was a lot of tension there. If we have to jam a rush order in here, just like I did, I just moved this to another date. If I had a big order in here and maybe I wanted to, split this into a separate date, I can split this into a separate date and finish part of it on Wednesday afternoon and drop the other half into Thursday. So I have a lot of latitude. We have that standard journey that the order flows through from Printavo, all the standard journey, quotes, accepted, it's approved, it's paid, art department, in production, all the way out to shipping. But there's a point of departure, which I like to call it the micro steps that are specific to the process. So we run the journey in terms of the statuses in Printavo to the point we get in production, and we run all the production through Power Scheduler. And there's a couple of huge advantages of doing it this way, and I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. So if I have different workflows that I've set up for like screen printing and embroidery, if I go to my views here, you can see those kind of steps for the different processes right here. So I have a screen step in here. I've got quite a few different steps in here. I get to determine what these are. If I go to embroidery, they're a little bit different. So embroidery, I probably have a stitch out column. I don't have any embroidery jobs in here. Throw one in here if we needed to. So I get to see at a glance what's going on, and then I can add different views to my view. So if the only thing that I'm responsible for is the screen printing process, right? And maybe I'm just the person that mixes the inks, right? I can add a status over here, mix inks, and I could add a column for mixing inks, and I can see everything that I need to work on by date, and then I don't have to worry about looking back at tasks. It's just a really easy way at a glance to see what's going on. And so I'm the screen room guy, so I can see everything that's in the screen room. And as I'm rolling through this, I can mark these as in progress, or I can mark these as completed. And then we can see the journey of this part of the order. So now all of a sudden, all the order journey is over here, and we can see what hasn't been started. And so if somebody's dropping balls, it's pretty easy to point a finger at them and say, hey, noticed that there's nothing in receiving here. Did anybody bother to place the order? Oh, yeah, that's right. We're in a credit hold with Sanmar. I've got to get a check over to them. At a glance, you can kind of see where everything's going on. And this is very granular. So all this stuff over here, you can add whatever you want yourself. And then you can add all these views. So here's your screen room view over here. So everything that's going on with them is just isolated so you can see what's going on. And then, if I do need to split this job, I can just click on the little split button and put half of it into another day. This is the point I'm trying to make. If you're using InkSoft and Printavo integration, being able to collate those orders onto a single invoice, single job, and have it isolate them by print jobs, being able to bring it over to Power Scheduler, the embroidered part of that job will be on a separate embroidery line. The screen printing will be on a separate one, but it's still one invoice. It's still one job, but it's split out the different prints for it. And we can channel those all the way through production without having to split them into literally individual invoices. This is how it all works with Power Scheduler. So let's say now it's completed, it's done, we have printed it. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to this order over here where Sally Sasquatch is. And this is why it's a good idea to put a nickname in, because you can see at a glance, like John Shirts, in hands 423. That's like your nickname field right there. But Let's click into it and let's go over here. It's already ready for pickup. And then I'm going to move it back to InkSoft. We're going to handle all the delivery, pickup, all that stuff in InkSoft. So I'm just going to say Mark is ready to ship in InkSoft. And it's invoice number 3194. And what it did is it just moved it back to InkSoft. If we come over here to InkSoft now, and guess where it's at? It's in ready to ship. So it's sitting over here because we just passed it back to InkSoft. Marked as completed. Here's a link back to Printavo if I need to see it. It's ready to ship. Just process it like any other order. And it's just seamless. You created the order in InkSoft through the InkSoft store. You collected the money in InkSoft. The whole order is really being processed, like the physical financial side of it is being processed in InkSoft. What you're doing is you're handing it off to Printavo to take care of the production tasks, scheduling, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to recreate an invoice. There's no double order entry. Everything is still syncing up with QuickBooks because you have your InkSoft account synced with QuickBooks, so your books are in line. It's just a really elegant, simple, easy solution. There's a lot of value with this integration because what you're seeing is you have this remarkable e-commerce capability with store cloning and the ability to have an integrated design capability and the ability to process graphics and embroidery files and really easily create products to populate in your store by using colorways and all the other pretty awesome functionality of InkSoft. But now you have this very streamlined, robust, simple, effective way of scheduling everything for production. That's how it all works together. So we are super excited. What you guys are seeing in the current level of integration is some pretty big enhancements that were added to the platform as a result of customer feedback. But we have additional customer feedback that we're making some revisions and improvements right now too that you guys will all benefit from. What I'm going to do next, we have a very special guest. So let me introduce Courtney. Courtney Walpole is a coworker of mine, and we work very closely together. We work together at trade shows. I'm in charge of training all the salespeople, and she is very successful. But her and her husband, Brian, also have a decorated apparel business in a little town called Buffalo, Wyoming, at the foothills of the Bighorns. And they uprooted their entire family from Philadelphia and moved cross-country to Buffalo, Wyoming, and continued with their printing business. They've just kind of slowly took over the merch business in Buffalo. And I want her to talk a little bit about how she's using the three platforms and how she's using integration.
We have been using Printavo for a long time, probably since 2017, and we added InkSoft about maybe a year and a half ago, and then Graphics Flow shortly thereafter. Printavo was always our main source of running our shop and doing all of our production, but lately, it's almost as if you don't have e-commerce, you're really behind the game. A lot of people are now conditioned to want and need team stores, corporate stores, fundraiser stores, and all of that. So we really decided that it was something that we needed if we were going to be competitive or get an edge. So we added that because InkSoft is really the forward-facing, e-commerce solution, and Printavo is really the forward-facing, the front of the line for the production management and the shop management. So to be able to blend those two together, and we realized a need for it. So here in town, in Buffalo, it's a very small town, about 5,000 people. We have been able to leverage those merch stores through InkSoft and really grow our business. We've only been here for about 9 months, but one store will turn into three will turn into 9. And so it's kind of this exponential growth that we've been experiencing with those. We'll do a fundraiser store for a school or a team, and then a handful of parents will have a business or an organization where they could use that same functionality. So we make sure that on every single store we have at the bottom of it, if you need something like this or want something like this, contact us, reach out. And it's really kind of crazy. I think, Craig, when I started for working with you guys, we probably had, when we moved to Buffalo, it was probably maybe 3 or 5 stores. I just looked today, we're actually up to almost 20 stores, which is pretty incredible. And then Graphics Flow has just been great for us too, just to get rid of those art bottlenecks, to add templates in there. The retail space is new for us, so I've actually been playing around with Graphics Flow a lot to come up with some of those retail-friendly designs to have in the front when people come through the shop and are looking for that tourist t-shirt. But the interplay between all of them, and really the game changer for us, was we knew we needed InkSoft because of its e-commerce capabilities. So in the interim, we were kind of just taking those orders, printing them out and just running production. I wasn't manually re-entering anything. I know there's some shops that do that. So with this integration, to be able to just push all of this data over and run our production through Printavo has been a huge time saver and just has been working really well for us.
So what's the one piece of advice that you would give a Printavo InkSoft graphics flow user when they're first starting out?
It's easy to get overwhelmed as a business owner. You feel like there's so many things that are going on. There's so many things that you guys have to worry about and that you have your hand in all of this stuff. I would just say, and I still have to remind myself, you just have to take it one step at a time, right? The easiest way, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. And it's making that first step that's the hardest, I think. My biggest regret with Printavo was not signing on sooner. We had kicked the can down the road for so long because we just couldn't do one more thing. And it has changed our business. It's helped us scale and grow. And if there's, that one piece of advice is don't sacrifice having perfection for delaying some kind of progress, right? Just a little bit at a time and just make a step because it's not going to change if you don't do something.
Thank you all for joining us today. So we will see you on the next InkSoft Academy, I believe in 2 weeks. So see you then.